I see we're at the top of the hour. We try really hard to honor people's time because we know it's very precious. And Michele is back and she's going to lead us through a vision session. So I'm really thrilled at everyone who's here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Abra Bryn. I'm the Executive Director of the Central Kootenay Food Policy Council. And Patrick Steiner, who is the president of our board, was going to welcome everyone today, but I got a notice late last night that he's come down with COVID and just isn't feeling functional enough to do this welcome. So it falls upon me, and I'm feeling the weight of wanting to do this well and help set us up for this session with Michele. And so I hope you will pardon with me or have patience with me. The Central Kootenay Food Policy Council is created by the regional district, and so we align with the political boundaries of the RDCK. Within that region, there are homelands of the Ktunaxa, the Sinixt, the Syilx, and the Secwepemc. And for us as an organization, we're really committed to moving this beyond just knowing who was here, who is here, the long, long histories in these places, and what does it mean for us, particularly as a food policy council. And I've had the privilege of reading, well, a host of different Indigenous authors, but John Burroughs most recently, he's got a brilliant book on Canada's Indigenous Constitution and the multiplicity of governance structures that pre-exist and continue to exist alongside Canada's. And as a food policy council, we've probably focused too much on colonial governance and structures. And so for me, one of the calls of the TRC of our mission to contribute to a just and sustainable food systems is to really understand and embrace the First Peoples of the areas where we work and live and share food together. And so that's a part of our journey. We're looking to transform our organization into something that's much more aligned with anti-racism work, with decolonization and reconciliation and truth. And we're still babies here, so we don't always get it right, but we're working hard. And I'm really excited to have Michele here today with us to lead this visioning session. But before I pass it over to Michele, I just want to quote from a book that I highly recommend to anyone if you can get your hands on it. Lee Maracle was a Stolo elder, and she passed into the spirit world late last year. And she was one of the few feisty Indigenous authors, women authors, kicking down doors quite a few years ago as a young woman. And she has written an amazing series of books that are really provocative and important learning spaces, I think. And so I spent my Christmas holiday reading My Conversations with Canadians. If you can get your hands on a copy, it will provoke you, infuriate you, humble you, and inspire you. And I wanted to inspire us today. So rather than focusing on some of her more provocative and pointed statements about Canadians and our stupid assumptions about Indigenous people, I thought I would read something a little more inspiring from her. So, because the earth is holding us up, it reminds us of our obligations to all the beings that sustain us, including the Earth Mother, who literally permits us to walk all over her. The sky is unending. It contains the bird world, the world of the dead, and star nations, or the galaxy. The connections there, then, are completely clear and endless. The possibilities are endless. The very endlessness of possibility is the source of inspiration, the dreaming world, the imagination, and our ability to recover from the trials of daily life. Picture the endless capacity for joy in making endless relations with all the beings in the universe. So I really hope in our time today, and I expect that Michele will be very clever at helping us get humanity, human beings, out of the center because we tend to stumble, make a lot of mistakes when we have Canadians and humans always at the center of our universe, and recognizing with more humility about all the beings and the ecosystems that enable us to live well on this planet, I think is something that we really need to aspire to. So thank you all for joining us today. I am thrilled to have Michele with us this morning. She's a Ktunaxa woman, brings great humor and wisdom and patience with us in helping us walk along this path of re-envisioning what we as a Food Policy Council can do. So thank you everyone again for joining us, and Michele, I'll move it over to you.
Awesome. Kisa quiet. Kisa Kwishnam. I just said good evening. Apologies. Thank you so much, Abra. Thank you so much for starting us that way. I met Lee so many years ago, and then met her a number of different times. I didn't have the commitment to writing the way that a lot of the people around me did, despite writing a lot. I didn't want to publish and so I don't think the thing that I loved about Lee is that she set the tone, I think, for women like me, with unruly, sorry, I have a fly flying around me, unruly women, unruly Indigenous women, unruly Aksmaknik, Pashki, Ktunaxa women, that we didn't have to be nice ladies. This fly is just like a little tiny thing. Go away now. Okay. Unruly. And so thank you for reminding me of herself and of John Burroughs as well. Yeah, Indian country can be really small, despite all of the differences and so on and so forth. We've all sort of come up together, and many of the people, ahead of, right, in the movement. So thank you for that. Yes, thank you. I can't say thank you enough. It's just okay. So Gisak Wishnam Gapiniskil Husugits Kootenay Nausa Mayitki Husugits Kootenay. So I see some names, and then I see like there was one in there that had just an alphabet, a number of letters. Oh, WKPC. So I'm going to ask you very quickly, because I don't think all of you do you all know each other? No. Okay. So quick round of introductions, please. Your name, who you, like, where you are in right, and how you come to this meeting. Really quick, like a minute. So once you've had your chance to speak, you're going to pick the next person to go. So pay attention to who's gone, right? Take your pick right now, who you want to talk to, who you want to tag. Okay, we're playing a bit of Zoom tag. Let's see, I'm going to pick on, let's go with Daniel first. And then you get to pick the next person. Daniel?
Hello, my name is Daniel Eisen. I'm coming to you from Nelson. I am the outreach coordinator at the Kootenay Co-op. And I will pick Lynx, Lardo Valley.
Sorry. Hi, thanks. I'm Chelsea, and I live in Argenta. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge this beautiful place where I live, watching my kids walk down the bus down the mountainside, and the morning light reflecting off the snow. It's so beautiful, and I'm so grateful to live here. And I'm also, really uncomfortable with the fact that it's unceded and stolen territory of the Sinaiks, Silex, and Ktunaxa. and even that is, you know, complicated, and I don't know a lot. So I just feeling that, and just watched the recording from the last session. So it's all really front of mind. So I'm glad to be here. This is my first Food Policy Council meeting for Lynx, and I'm here for up the lake region and our special unique needs up here. I'm gonna pick Neri. Am I saying your name right?
It's Nairi. But-
Nairi.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Nairi Marsh. I have most of my adult life been either a subsistence or commercial farmer, and now I currently work for the Basin Business Advisor Program as the agricultural specialist. So I provide free one-to-one advisement for agriculture businesses around the entire basin and food processors as well. And I will pick Alice.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alice Ford. I'm calling to you from my home in Sinites Territory, Slocan Valley, Ravine Creek Farm, where I farm with our family. And I'm also a member of the Kootenay Organic Growers Society, our local organic certifier. And really, yeah, also just, you know, love thinking in big ways about these things. So that's why I'm here. Thank you all for this opportunity, and I will send it on to Paris.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. I am based in Nelson at the moment and looking out on the mountains and aware of the lake, which is fabulous. And I am coming to this meeting in my position with the Regional District of Central Kootenay as Sustainability Planner. And I will pass it on to Amy.
Thanks, Paris. Good morning, everybody. My name is Amy, and I'm the Communications Coordinator for the Food Policy Council, and I'm coming from Nelson today. And I will pass it on to Ramona.
Good morning, and I'm coming to you from Proctor in Tanaka Territory, Sinites, and Silks. And I'm a regional district director who has a long history with food and agriculture. And I'm on the Food Policy Council and have been since its inception. And I will pass it on to Gary.
Sure. Thanks, Ramona. So I'm Gary Jackman. I'm RDCK Director for Area A, Windle East Shore, Kootenay Lake. So I'm in the heart of beautiful downtown Boswell. Also part of the Yakinuki people's area. To talk the beauty in the mountains and everything, I did a quick run to Creston and back through the fog in the morning, and the sun's out now, and thinking it's mid-February. It is a beautiful place in this planet to live. Abras put out an invitation for some of us to get caught up on what's going on, so I appreciate that. I was actually with the council at the very beginning, but I thought it was better that not too many of us elected stack the discussion. So just checking in, seeing how you're, what you're up to, how you're doing.
And who would you like to invite next?
Sorry, how about Christy Gray? I see you on the screen.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. I'm calling from Creston, BC, Tanaha. I own a company called Foodie Foodies. My business is all about sustainability and making it, giving the ability to small farmers, big business, to promote their companies and enable everybody to buy online, shop online, and sell online, whether that be farm gate, cash, or credit card sales. And I'm here to promote farmers markets and farmers market style buying. So thank you for having me here.
And who would you like to pick to go next?
Sorry, I don't know who's all gone, but I'll pick somebody, and maybe Daniel. It's the first name I see. So
Daniel started, so pick
Okay.
another.
Who hasn't gone yet? I had to ask a phone call, so.
Okay, why don't we go with Elizabeth?
Did you see the hands? There you go.
Okay, I'm Elizabeth Quinn. I'm with Fields Forward Society, and I've had the pleasure of being on the Food Policy Council with many wonderful people for several years and learned a lot from everyone. And I appreciate all the connections being made throughout the whole Columbia Basin and RDCK and the West and East Kootenays. So it's a great way for us all to work together. So I'm really pleased to be on this call and look forward to figuring out what we're going to do over the next several years together. And also, one thing I should mention, we have a food hub in the Creston Valley, and please spread the word. Okay, thank you.
Pick somebody.
And who
to go.
next?
Gosh. Let's see. How about Nick?
Hi everyone, I'm Nick. I'm from Creston. I'm currently working for BC Wildlife Federation, supervising the crew doing the restoration of the Akanuki wetlands with the Lower Kootenay Band, which has been a really exciting project. I've come from an organic farming background and have done restoration in the past, and this has been an interesting mind shift in seeing food systems in a different way. It's not just conservation here and farming here, because the work I'm doing is on the traditional hunting grounds of the Ktunaxa. And so this isn't just, it's been an interesting shift in my view of what it means to work in the food systems. I'm also on the Organic BC Accreditation Board, which oversees organic certification in the province, and I am on the board of directors of IFOAM North America, which is the regional body of the International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movements from North America. So I kind of get to play with policy at regional and provincial and national and international levels, which has been quite exciting, and I'm excited to see where we go next with the Food Policy Council. And I'll go pass it on to Michael, I think hasn't gone yet.
Yep. Hi, I'm Mickey Wodorowski. I live in the cusp on a little orchard. I'm owner of Homegrown Market and Juice Bar. We are all about trying to create more local economy through food and wellness. I'm also part of the Nakusp Area Development Board. I'm representing small business and the agricultural aspect of the area. And I was part of the Policy Council in the beginning, and unfortunately had to go through a transplant. So I stepped down, and now I'm just checking in to see what's happened since I've been gone.
Yay.
And I'm not very good at Zoom, and I don't see anybody at all on here other than who's talking. So I don't know who to pick.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a quick Zoom. So in the top right corner of your screen, of the black screen, you should show up. If you move your mouse up, it'll show you actually, Abra, can I share my screen?
Sure, just a sec, I'll make you co-host.
Oh, it's letting me share it. We've already done it. Okay, so let me go back to, oops, there we go. In case anybody else has the same issues. Oh, now it's over here. So there should be a screen at the top, either the right or the left, that gives you a different view.
I don't see anything. I'm on a tablet, so I don't know if that makes a difference.
Okay, that's a completely different, yeah, I'm on a desktop. My apologies. Okay. Hands up, who wants to go next then? Okay, Shauna.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Shauna Fiddler. I'm with the West Kootenay Permaculture Co-op. I'm here in Slocan on the Sinaiks Temhulau. I'm so grateful for this Indigenous lens that this organization has taken. As the mother of a beautiful Indigenous woman, child, baby, I just love seeing our organizations in this area, in this region, really come full circle and look at new governance and new direction. So it means a lot to me. So thank you. And I think Kyle maybe hasn't gone yet.
Morning, I'm Kyle Wiebe. I'm a local livestock and agroforestry nut and in Nelson today. And I would like to hear from Haley. I don't think Haley's gone yet.
No.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. My name is Haley. I am calling in today from beautiful Creston, BC, Yakanuki, unceded territory. I'm on Canyon Street outside a coffee shop where I have internet access and a lovely man playing guitar right next to my table. So that's I'm standing on the sidewalk. I am with Young Agrarians. I'm the land matcher for the Columbia Basin, and I'm also on the board for the Policy Council and the local agricultural society with the Tool Library. So I'm very, very happy to be here with all of you today. So thank you. And I do believe I may be the last one.
Nope, Ramona.
Oh, Ramona.
No, Ramona actually did
Did she
already
go?
introduce herself.
Did she go?
Yeah, she did.
Sorry, I did. Thanks.
Oh, you did
Thanks,
too.
Val.
I apologize. I can't see faces, and I am a very visual person. And so the black screens, and I totally get that people need to do that, but it totally distracts me and I get lost. So my apologies. So it doesn't matter how much I think we use Zoom and all these different platforms, we all have our challenges with the communication and some of the assumptions that happen as well with things like online learning. So thank you very much, everybody, because I think now we have everybody. Yeah. Let me see, 4, 8, 12, 16, 17. Yeah. Okay. So as I'm listening to the amount of knowledge, I want to recognize, first of all, that you are a knowledge network unto yourselves, that there are knowledge relationships inherent to this conversation. You might not understand, or you might not have had this experience before, but I follow Tanakha protocol, even though we are filtered through technology. It doesn't change the importance of our relationships and my role in supporting your relationships with each other. So I am called to service. Abra and Amy asked me to do certain things with you. And so I said yes, but inherently it is not about me telling you what to do or me creating a dependence upon me to come and help you do what you do. I take very much to heart Tanakha place-based knowledge about knowledge relationships and how we do these things. And if you've ever heard the Tanakha creation story, you know that our understanding, our nipikas, called us all together, all living things, including the rocks, including the trees, including every aspect of energy, called us all together and told us that the human beings were coming and what we're going to do about it. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I'm okay with that. My relationship to that other world is good. And so, and that's very much how I approach the work that I do, is sharing information, but what are we going to do about it? And so the introductions are so very important because you all come with understandings. Sometimes those are helpful and sometimes they can become barriers, right? And so understanding ourselves is the first most important piece in developing policy, developing how we want to move together, developing our relationships, developing our connections. Often in ceremony, we don't sit beside each other. There might be a few people in between where we sit. And we structure ourselves in such a way because we have different roles and different responsibilities. We share a vision, but we have a different role and responsibility in carrying out that work. And so for me, a lot of the work is incredibly sacred, even though it's secular, right? And we're removed and all these other things, and maybe we don't all believe in the same thing. But to me, the work is actually sacred. It is an act of stewardship over Akamas Kapikapsen, which is all living things, right? Going back to our creation story, going back to those stewardship principles, going all the way back to what we were told as human beings. And it wasn't just the Tanaha Aksmaknik, it was all human beings were told this, because we were all created out of Yawunik, out of that story. And so understanding that piece, that's where I'm coming from. So it's not about me telling you now, here's what you're going to do. It's more about me asking you, okay, so here's what's going on. What do you think? So I have homework for you right now, because we're going to get into it later. But if you're taking notes, please do. If you're not taking notes, consider it. Doesn't have to be big notes, but just some words as you're listening, as we're going through this process, words or phrases that come to your mind about what's important. And you might already have that, but I ask you not just to rely on your past, but think about also your future, right? So what is important? What comes to you? What comes to you here? Sorry, my camera's too high, but in the middle of your belly, right? Just put your hand on the middle of your belly down there. Come on, you can do it. Right on your belly in there. It's where that's where people say your soul is, right? Your gut instinct, your feelings, ooh, right? Your butterflies when you're in love, your anxiety when you're like, ooh, I don't know what to do next. Right? And then the other is with your head. Put your hands on your head. Now put your hands on the front here. This is your prefrontal cortex. When you're forward thinking, this is where we want you. We want you in here. Back here, that's where your fight, flight, food, fucking freeze is. All your stress. Right? That's connected to the feeling pieces. So when we're thinking about forward thinking, we got to go through all these other pieces of our bodies into here. And it's very much like the landscape. And in fact, the landscape is Nachmutsen, was the land giant. And so as we're thinking about food, as we're thinking about systems, yes, the human beings are a system. You're a system unto yourself, but you're also connected to other systems. And this, what you have here as a group, that is a system. And that's how I'm approaching you. So keep in mind some thoughts, some ideas, some phrases, some words that are coming out for you as we go through these pieces, because those are going to help us later on. I'm going to share my screen now and get into the slide deck. So I understand we have about another hour and a half, right? Yep. Okay. So how many of you watched the video from the last session? Okay. So this is just, these two slides are just a quick synopsis of what we learned, what you learned, what the participants in those videos that participated, what they learned from our time together from that presentation. And it was really designed, we were trying to do 2 sessions very close together, but timing and illness and life in general led us to today. And so understanding, we talked about the justice, equity, equality, diversity, and inclusion model, the problematic language of using Jedi language, understanding how food systems in the past have actually been rooted in colonialism and in our homelands that we share, right? In the regions we live in, even the language around that, how it gets restructured, and that there's a desire to connect food and landscape and all beings, and the conflict, intractable conflict, I think, but the conflict between the local food systems and the global food systems that we are in, and not just, this is not just indigenous, non-indigenous, but in terms of the context that we are all eating within, not just living within, but eating within, and trying to access our foods. And so what people appreciated about the Central Kootenay Food Policy Council, so we looked at the last 5 years, right? We went through the timeline of all the things that you have accomplished, all of the different pieces. And these are the things that you said you appreciated, that to take forward, right? We don't want to lose these ideas. So the growth, the evolution, resiliency, responsiveness, resources, right? The development of resources, the sharing of those, networking, convening, knowledge sharing, of course, the leadership, recognizing the leadership since inception, right? The voice, Abra's voice ahead, approaches that are grounded, that are addressing, right, concerns, naming things, and of course, the processes, valuing the processes, not just the product, and the visuals, right? So the many ways that we can communicate our ideas with each other. And so when Abra and Amy and I were talking about, okay, what are we doing? What would you like, right? What, and asked to, can you help us with our visioning session? And I said, okay. And so from my perspective, vision is the big picture, right? It's documenting that big picture idea. Your mission is how you're going to achieve it. The core values are how you're going to behave, right? Some people call it ethics. Some people call it culture. The strategies, right? The ways you're going to get there. The goals, what needs to happen, the objectives, milestones, timelines, and they're connected. So you see the strategies are connected to the big picture. The goals are connected to the action plans, right? All of these are interconnected, but we tend to see them in the hierarchy, right? We tend to see them as they're written here. Action plans, understanding the difference between an implementation plan and a communication plan, right? So those are actually different, and that they have budgets, and they have not just budgets for finances, for funding, but budgets for people and skills. Not everybody has the same skills. I think you heard that when we went through the introductions. Lots of people have different experiences, different skills. And so there might be pieces of work that you need to do that you can tag somebody to say, actually, you're really good at this, right? I see Nick there talking about his levels of policy development and the various different places and how he sees that. Before the meeting started, talking to Chelsea and hearing about, yeah, they're going through a strategic planning session. And so understanding, right? Not everybody has the same skill sets. You don't need to be the same. That's a value. You can be place-based, right? And reflect and be grounded, literally grounded in where you are and your understanding and the needs and the evaluation. Because quite often we do these great, beautiful things and we're like, yeah, we did really good there, but we don't necessarily know, well, what did we do good in there? Yeah, we're really happy with this, but, and then, or we go the other direction where, you know, 8 out of 10, good job. Without really understanding the context again. How do you evaluate? How do you value what you've done now, right? And how do you share that? And then the celebration of such. After last session, listening to everybody talk about what they valued and what they appreciated, I was like, you know, yes, COVID, but I was like, I hope you guys are celebrating that. I hope there's celebration. And so when my community, when Akam, we did some strategic planning and sessioning. When my nation council has done similar, you know, that desire, that understanding, that appreciation of how important it is to celebrate and have fun. When I'm doing policy development with folks, people are often, you know, laughing their heads off at me at certain points, because policy is about what we want to do and how we want to do it and how, you know, all of the different pieces. It's not to police us, it's to enable us, right? There's a difference in there. We want to enable good eating, right? The Tanakh have a term, sukich iknachla, good eating. We have terms around food and eating and what that does and the medicines and I know that Western society has those as well and is starting to expand and inform itself again on old wisdom. Any questions yet? Oh yeah, Christy.
Hi, I feel like this might intrude a little bit, but I'm really in line with what you're saying. In fact, when I built my business, this is everything that I had in mind. And I built a food and farm directory. Actually, that's exactly what I did. And I would love to be able to work with, you know, all of you to be able to build this out. I would love to be able to work with your policies and share this company, because everything is just so much in line with my business. Thank you.
Anybody else? And I think Amy's taking notes, right? Yeah, thanks. Anybody else? Sorry, when people are talking, I tend to take my slides down only because I don't know if you have two monitors or not, or if you can see everybody. So sorry if that's distracting. Okay. So we all agree that this is kind of what happens, right? There is an iterative process, yeah? Yeah, I see a few heads nodding, okay. So I have a few visuals here that I really like and I like to think about. And so I did some research for my nation council, for the Tanakh Nation Council, on a diet study on actual cumulative impacts on foods. And, you know, there's a certain assumption that a lot of our food, our diet, is actually store-bought. And why is that? And so I'm using this visual as an example. So your food policy council, your vision, because a lot of you are talking about the valleys, right, where you live in, you know, Nafmutzen. And so understanding that big picture, right? This is the big picture here. What does this look like? What's your vision? What's your name? Right? Was one of the things that came up last time we met, around, is this the correct name for yourselves? And then you start to see it be populated with the work, and you're growing. You had one staff for a very long time with an active board, and now you have 2, maybe 3 staff, and a shift, because Abra's made it very, you know, very clear she's wanting to grow out of her role. Grow out of her role. Often we spend a lot of time growing into our roles and responsibilities, and we forget at the other end. So it's a moment of opportunity. And so you see what I just had with that list, black and white, is actually a way to go forward along the waterways. Food is a byproduct of water. There's a chat. Oh, love this. Okay. Thank you. So food being a byproduct of water, you see the difference between having that vision, that big picture vision, right? And then going along the way, following the system, right? Following the water system, for example, and putting the pieces of work together. So it's not just, okay, we've got a vision, yeah, go. There's the steps, or there's the process. The best part, I think, is that in working with folks like yourself is a lot of people are very land-based. So you go hiking and you go camping and you go canoeing and kayaking and biking. And so you know what a backpack is. And you put stuff in your backpack to go out and do something. And that helps a lot, because what you determine, what you put into your backpack is specific to what you're going out to go do. And so there's stories about people like in my community about when we used to go harvesting for certain things at certain times of the year and the equipment we would take to be able to do that, right? That we have a sturgeon nose canoe for the lakes, but we have all these rivers that we wouldn't have used that canoe on. We would have done different things. So that difference between domesticating things and living with the systems, right? Understanding those different systems. So what's a vision? What is a vision statement? In my estimation, and because often I don't know any of you, so bear with me. I'm a big one about share information and then ask questions. So understanding that vision is very philosophical. It reflects your worldview. It's emotional, right? It's all about down here in your belly, right? Your feels. It gives you inspiration. It reflects a moment in time. And for this group, you know, it describes experiences from what I heard from you last time is that your vision will describe the experiences for people in food. And maybe even past that. Maybe even including, you know, I don't know how many of you have animals, but what your animals eat. The choices we make for the people and the animals that we feed. I have cats and dogs myself. My dog, I got him in November, just before Tanacha went into ceremony. And we don't waste our food. So when I came back from ceremony every night, every morning actually, I'd have a bunch of food that I couldn't finish. He would eat. People think it's weird that he eats lettuce and salad, tomatoes, right? Stuff he probably shouldn't, but he does. Because when he was a puppy, that was what he was given, right? So the food choices. The vision guides your actions. It's tangible, and it has a timeline. And it doesn't mean you throw it out after 5 years, right? It's like becoming. You keep reinventing yourself. I like using the examples of like Madonna or U2 or something, right? Because I mean, like the longevity of career, you keep reinventing yourself, right? To people say to make you relevant, but I think it's also an aspect of being a lifelong learner, right? You continue to learn, you continue to grow, you continue to embrace the universe, the world around you. And, you know, like her or not, I think Madonna is one of those, because I'm like, she embraces everything, right? Do I always agree with her? No, but she's kind of neat, right? She's got some things and she's doing interesting things. Does she have a vision for herself? Absolutely. Right? Do we each have a vision for ourselves? Do you have a vision for yourself? Just hands up if you have a vision for yourself. Are you guided by a vision? Or are you just flying by the seat of your pants? Somewhat. I have two children. My son is 18 and my daughter is 27, and my son is over at the Royal Military College, and he came home over Christmas, and we're at the sweat house and talking to a few people and older, right? Like my brother and Sophie Pierre and others. And my son, you know, because they were like, so how's it going? What do you think you're going to do? And he went on for about 10 minutes about what he was going to do, how he was going to do it, and when, and da 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 da. And we just looked at him, and I just thought, wow, at his age, I had no clue. I was still hitchhiking across Canada. Didn't know it was unsafe at the time, but hitchhiking across Canada. And, you know, I'm 54 almost now, and it's still the vision, right? What's the vision now? My children have left the house. What am I going to do now? Right? So having that opportunity to really think about, well, who am I? Where am I going? And what am I going to do? And so if you don't have a vision for yourself, maybe you'll find some things, right, to help you to find that, to figure out what that looks like for yourself. Your vision for yourself and how you want to work with this group of people over the next 5 years, because many of you are coming from other places to contribute. So what does that look like for yourself, right? Those are the tangibles. I'll share with you, this is the Ktunaxa Nation Council vision statement. And I only speak as Ktunaxa because I am Ktunaxa. I don't speak for Okanagans, Sinaiks, Silks, Secwepemc, Métis, Anishinaabe. I don't even speak for the Haudenosaunee, of whom my father is from, because to honor those people, I follow my mother. And so it's not to say those visions aren't important. They're not my story to tell, right? So this is an example of a vision statement. It's philosophical. It's a shared worldview. It's emotional. It's inspirational, right? All of those things. It's based on relationships. And it describes the experience we would like to have. Does that make sense? Is that, yeah? Okay. So here's the first part of the work. So if you want to write that question down or maybe put it in the chat, because I'm going to stop sharing and this is going to be the work, your work, is like, what words describe your vision for the Central Kootenay Food Policy Council? Do you have some words that you'd like to share about this? Because we're not going to wordsmith. We're not going to come up with that statement, the Ktunaxa Nation Council statement there that I just showed you. Guess how long it took to get that? That came out of almost a year. It started with one meeting where we all got together and said, yeah, we need to do this. And then over the year, it was, you know, the nation, right? The Ktunaxa people. So many, probably, I don't know, there's 15, 16 people here. So do the math. I can't right now. But many times it took to get people to give words. And then it took one or two writers to write something out and go, okay, is this? And then take it back to people and yeah, no, right? We're not doing that today. We're at the very start of, what are your words? Let's start with some words. So I'm going to stop sharing for now. It's going to be the same format. So think about if you have words, and then pick somebody else. You know, if you want to go next, put up your hand so that people can see that you have something that you want to share. But this is not, you're not putting your hand up for me. You're putting your hand up for the person that went ahead of you. Okay? Yeah? Okay. Anybody want to go first? Elizabeth.
Working together.
Anybody else? Gary.
Yes, and I'm a visitor here, but I think the word nourishing should be in there. And I don't just mean simply physiologically nourishing, but the process of local food growing and sharing it is nourishing the community, it's community spirit.
Okay. Michael, did you have?
Community and
Okay.
unity. And abundance.
Sorry, community, unity, and abundance.
Yeah, enough for everyone.
Okay. Chelsea?
Sorry, I'm bad with my microphone. Meaningful.
Nick?
Good food, the concept of however that gets defined, but good food, as well as fair and equity, the other two words that came to mind.
Okay. Christy, the Nairi.
I got a couple of the same words: community, togetherness, collaboration, and growth.
Go ahead, Nairi.
I also had reciprocity. So really for all things, our environment, food, the people that grow our food, everyone who needs to eat, the whole thing.
Anybody else? Ramona?
I had vibrant and enduring. I also had nourish.
Enduring and nourish. Okay. Chelsea again? Oh, sorry, Elizabeth, were you going to go ahead?
I went already.
Oh, okay, sorry, your little you showed up yellow, so I thought. Okay, go ahead, Chelsea.
Yeah, we're resilient. That's my last one, I think.
Okay. Haley.
My words are equitable and accessible.
Okay. Shauna.
I mimicked resilience and reciprocity, but I also have on here supporting or supportive, collective, and the word hive.
Haley, did you want to go again, or did you your hand's still up? Shauna, and your hand's up too still. Okay. Anybody who hasn't gone yet who wants to share some of those words? Kyle.
Legacy. Not quite preparation, but down the lines of resiliency and legacy for future generations.
Preparation. Not quite preparation.
Yeah, I don't want the prepper label just yet.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know if I heard that right. I'm trying to write it all down at the same time. Okay. Anybody else? Alice.
Interrelationships, integration, and whole systems.
Whole systems? Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm just looking for other, okay. Okay, in 5 minutes. Sorry, Everett, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, Ramona had her hand up too, though.
Oh,
Ramona,
okay.
did you want to say something?
I did. I do want to put the word diverse.
Diverse. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
And the word I want to add is justice.
Anybody else?
Has inclusion been said yet?
Inclusion? Even if it has been, Daniel, it doesn't matter. Inclusion. Okay. Anybody else? Michael? No? Okay. So in 5 minutes, I have this entire page with many words from this small group. When you were listening to other people speaking words, did you start to connect your words to theirs? Or did you start thinking of new words? Connections? New words? Yeah. That's the plus side of your organization already, is your ability to connect and just start feeding off each other, right? Literally feeding off of each other's ideas, adding to, creating your network, right? Solidifying your network. So for myself, when I look at all these words, I'm like, oh yeah, Amy has her work cut out for her, right? As the wordsmith, to start to look at and listen to and hear how these words go together, right? How you know, and that's part of why I wrote them as you said them, because there's a trail, much like this river, right? Elizabeth says,
I can see it.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
it this trail? So you'll notice this is this is quite often how we're taught to think about it. We're all on the road together going this way, right? Is it this way? Is it developed? Is it regulated? Right? There will be some regulation, definitely. Do you see the difference between these two visuals? That's how your path looks. What does your path look like? What are you more comfortable with? What needs to be considered? Does that make sense? Yep. Okay. I think before we go any further, did you? Uh-oh. Did I stop sharing? Did you see the two visuals? No. Oh. Okay, hang on a second. I apologize. I thought I was still sharing. So I was doing this neat thing. At least I thought it was neat, but okay. So this is one visual and this is the other. Right? Which one resonates?
Wow.
if I can, Michelle, the road requires us to push everything, whereas the river flows with nature. It's a lot easier if you can enter into a process and work with nature. And when you're looking at food, you better be prepared to work with nature and not assume everything's going to be in a greenhouse with artificially generated heat and light, because you probably won't do as well as you will if you're working with nature and following the course of the river. Or what comes to my mind is the endless river. If our water cycle functions properly, it is endless. Our roads are not. They deteriorate without our input. They deteriorate.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention about the river is there's a song about a river, and sometimes the river is fast and sometimes the river is slow, and the river doesn't mind if it's fast or slow. So when it comes to realizing our vision, it'll take time. Sometimes it'll be faster. So anyway, I like that. Thanks.
Alice says, dang, Gary, with a star and a fire. Ramona, do you want to add something?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay.
I was just enjoying that. I know the song.
Oh, you do? Yeah, you do. Yeah.
So is one right and one wrong? I want to be able to say no. Abra? Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing again. Abra?
Well, I'm not going to respond to your most recent question, but something that's been sort of weighing on me since you showed that beautiful picture. In my personal and some of my professional life, I work a lot on climate change. And I love the mountains here. I am so deeply embedded in this region. I will leave here kicking and screaming if I ever have to. And from my office, I can look out on a mountain landscape and see glaciers. And the thing that I carry a sort of a perpetual burden of grief attached to the human impacts on the planet and the crisis of climate change that we're in. And in the last couple of weeks, I heard a piece about the fact that our glaciers are dying. And they're such a foundational part of our watersheds. And I can't imagine a world, I'm sorry, I get very emotional about this. I can't imagine a world without our glaciers. And so I look at a picture like that, and we're talking about a vision for the Food Policy Council. And I guess like that whole creative and celebration and positive vision piece, I understand the need for that, but I also feel acutely at this time on the planet's history as an individual and as an organization to be called, and this ties into my statement or my word of justice, like we are harming all of the beings on this planet and compromising our ability to live here well and for everyone to be nourished, everything to be nourished. And so I guess my question that I'm carrying in this session is, in that vision, how do we integrate that call for us to be firmly committed to action that preserves those glaciers and the ability of all beings and the water to still flow?
Thank you. You have a great segue for that. So hang on to that thought, because you're getting us to that next step of how. And absolutely the emotion, right? Absolutely. When we start talking about vision, that's why I say it's an emotional, right? It's an emotional statement. It's an inspirational statement. And absolutely not denying the work of it, the undoing of it, but also recognizing that celebration, that balance. We need to bring back that balance, right? Otherwise it becomes a pendulum. Can we find that balance? Christy, go ahead.
I really wanted to say thank you for bringing that up, Abra. Something that I heard this morning that I don't know how much this lines up with everybody, but preserving our nature and our valleys is heavily in line with our trees. This morning, I heard that Canfor is planning something like 120 cut blocks, clear cut, just around the Creston Valley alone. And just recognizing that what they are, how many blocks have been taken from our area already is astounding. Our mountains are becoming really bare. And one of my main goals is to just bring awareness of how much they're essentially raping our forests. And beyond anywhere else in British Columbia, our cuts have almost been double. So just if that's something to keep in mind and align with the way that we feel about our valleys, please do.
Thanks, Christy. So I'm going to go back to these slides again and recognize what the difference is. Because I think that's exactly what you both are talking about, right? And I think that's a lot of what all of you are talking about. It's the same area, right? It's a similar area. What have we done? What are we going to do? And I wanted to take a break. We're going to get into the mission because that's the how. That's the how question. And so I also wanted to acknowledge that I got to watch Greta Thunberg. She's got a series happening right now. I think it's on PBS, and it's from a few years ago of her world tour, just before COVID hit, where she was going to the World Economic Summit and so on and so forth. Sorry. I'd never heard her talk or witnessed, because I don't watch a lot of television on purpose. It's a choice. But listening to her, we're not alone in our concerns and in our griefs. One thing that I was reminded of is not to stay in our grief. We are still here. We still have a responsibility. We need to figure out what to do. And what I thought was so amazing was listening to this young woman just do the little thing that she thought she could do. She's go on strike. And to witness also her tears, Abra, right, and her grief as a young person. And so I know that Alice has her son, her child in the background there. So every time you see me wave, it's because I'm waving at him or her. I can't even tell who it is there. But I'm really grateful that that young person is in this meeting, whether they know it or not. And last night was reminded again from the Tanakh that we have to figure out that balance because our young people keep us grounded. We keep that in mind of our young people. We're doing this for our young people. So it's not just the preservation or the conservation, right? But it's actually, somebody said it, the legacy, perpetuation, right? Perpetuity. And then thinking about seeing, I don't know if he went through where you guys are, but the young Scottish guy that was walking across Canada to raise money to rewild Scotland. Watching last night, the scientists go out with Greta and measure climate of snow, recognizing the shifts to the mountains in Europe right? The landslides that keep happening, the, you know, the lack of the mountains being able to stay as mountains. And so I think that's where, you know, the region, we're not unto ourselves, right? We are, but we are also connected to these other pieces. So I really appreciate that. What I would suggest we do, because we now have about 50 minutes left, and I was going to shift our thinking a little bit to the how, right? So the mission. But what I'm wondering is, do we need to take like a 5-minute break? Can we take a 5-minute break?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask you all, because I don't know what the weather is like where you are, but I would ask you all to go step outside.
Mm-hmm.
Just go step outside and feel the sun, feel the wind, just go step outside for a minute, okay? And then turn your videos on when we're back. Okay, I think we're all back. Kyle and Haley, I'm just going to assume you're back unless you, okay, cool. Alice and Haley, Amy, if you just want to put a hands up or some sort of icon if you're not going to turn on your screen. And Abra, your hand is still up in case you want to still talk. Okay. All right. So thank you, first of all, for indulging me in going outside. I don't know how many of you, as a regular day-to-day practice, spend most of your time on the computer or on a Zoom meeting. My apologies. Okay, I might have to put him back outside. Shoo. He might actually come into this meeting. Yeah, I don't know how many of you in your day-to-day, as you're doing your work, as you're juggling all of the different commitments, but taking that moment, right, of walking the talk. Talking about how important the environment is, how we are connected to the environment. And the challenge is always, how do we reconnect to the environment when we're here in this filtering, right, through technology, through our day-to-day jobs. And you might already know this, but the easiest way to do so, I was taught by other Tanakh knowledge holders, is to literally go outside, stand outside. Wherever you are, just stand there. Breathe, look, feel, right? Because that's us in relationship to the universe, right? So, and it's important, especially when we have the emotions, right? And trying to figure out what we're going to do next. So, we're going to take this last little bit of our time together today, and we're going to talk a little bit, and we're going to unpack what the mission, and so unpack the mission. And Abra and Amy gave me these words that are already within your structure, within the Central Kootenay Food Policy Council, around to build a just, sustainable, and prosperous food system in our region. And so the questions that, and I think one of you, somebody else mentioned it too, and I meant to put it into my diagram, but is around definitions. Often we assume we have the same definition of a word. And this is a problem with English in particular. Indigenous languages are they're context specific, they're context dependent, which means when you listen to Indigenous people's language, for example, Tanakh language, there are concepts that explain something with precision, where English language is very decontextualized. right? It doesn't need a context. And it's actually not even a language, but we won't get into that today. But it's assumed. And when you look at the dictionary, one of the reasons you need a huge dictionary is because there's many, many meanings for the same thing, right? So when some of the terms that we're coming up with, some of the comments, some of the, the words that you gave, what do you mean by that word? So these ones, for example, a just. As Indigenous people, I was one of the ones in the 90s saying it's a just us system. It's not a justice system because it provides no justice for Indigenous people. And so as we think about a just society, right? A just food system, what does that mean? What does it mean to be sustainable? You all, like, already I can tell there's going to be different definitions of that, right? How do you sustain the system of food? Which system? Which food system? Right? Prosperous. What does it mean to have a prosperous food system? For me, it would mean that I have access to elk that are healthy, plants that are feeding the elk, right? Plants that I can eat too, as well as access to good food, organic food, food without pesticide, food without, right? Et cetera, and food that's healthy for my body, because I can't eat everything. There's certain foods I can't eat. And what is our region? So that's an interesting question, because I know it's been the central Kootenay, but I'm over in the East Kootenays going, could you come over here? It would be really great, because we don't have anything like this, I don't think. And can we, right? And the discussion of the Indigenous nations, right? The shared territories and so on and so forth. These are all considerations. So this next part is, again, yeah, so if any of you were expecting to come to the meeting and not have to do the work, sorry, I teach like this too. My students are getting used to it. But what is just? So we're going to go around again, and these are the questions, right? What do we mean by just? A just food system. I'm gonna, Amy, I don't know if you put that in the chat for me, because then I'll stop sharing so I can see everybody's face and not be distracting with this big. What do we mean? What do you mean by a just? What could we mean by a just food system? Anybody want to start? Gary's going to start us off. Excellent.
Yeah, maybe a difficulty would be if you take the root word just and extend it out to justice, because our justice system is set on law, is set on a system of series of laws, which were heavily biased over the centuries.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought is, if we use a word that kind of leans into something else, that takes people down a preset path, maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe it's entirely the wrong word. Just and justice will take decades more to restructure what those words mean. So rather than just, people were talking about fairer or stuff like that, just is maybe a poor word for 90% of our population to wrap their head around. If you were to boil it more down to fairness, or something that we can understand in our hearts, as opposed to thinking legalese and precedents, that might be a better root word to start with.
Thanks, Gary. So I see hands up. So in order of how I see them, was Christy, Nairi, and then Elizabeth. Go ahead, Christy.
When I built my business, I wanted to serve both the farmers and the land, and I wanted to make sure that I kept sustainability in mind. So when I think of just, when it comes to everything as a whole, I would say that it serves both the people and the land.
Thank you. Go ahead, Nairi. Am I saying your name correctly, Nairi?
Yes, you are saying it correctly. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, for me, just personally, I think just is a lack of harm. System that doesn't harm the animals that are involved, the land, the water, the air, or the people, and that captures, certainly for people where they're at economically, socially, and all of those things.
Thank you. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
When I heard the word just, I thought of entering into the lives of people and considering people and how what we do, how it supports their life. So in a positive way. So I felt it couldn't be in just one word. It had to be nuanced, and there has to be a consideration of a human being that we're thinking about, the people all the time. So that's what came to me.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Ramona, and then Alice.
When I think of just, I think of do no harm, but I also think of equal access or appropriate access.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ramona. Alice?
When I saw the 3 words, I immediately saw and felt that all 3 words are mutually interchangeable and self-reinforcing. That justice, for me, must mean sustainable and prosperous. Sustainable must mean prosperous and just. That they are all different ways of expressing the same thing.
Shauna?
Initially I wrote down representational or representative, and then after Christy's comments about the connection with land, I was reminded of the permaculture ethics that our organization is guided by, which is care of earth, care of people, and return of surplus. So back to that reciprocity.
Thanks. Anybody else? Abra?
I've really enjoyed this conversation. Justice has been a guiding word concept for me most of my life, and just as an abbreviated form of it, I certainly don't see it as representative of the colonial justice system, so-called. But I, as someone who's worked within this mission statement, I've appreciated the fact that it is vague enough that it provides an opportunity for conversation and for learning. You know, if it's really narrowly defined, it's not adaptable, and it's not sort of generative and creative. So I'm comfortable with words that are open.
So this might be, sorry, Shauna, did you want to go as? Okay, sorry. I was looking down. So no right, no wrong. The dialogue around definitions, right? Around the values, around how we interpret. To build a just and sustainable, prosperous food system, are you putting that in because the food system has been doing harm, is not accessible? And in which ways? Is it the highway or is it the river? And not to give it a black and white, because I think there's shades of gray, but just to help thinking about the importance of being able to agree to what does it mean to be a just system? right? I started the conversation off with, you know, an Indigenous perspective of more often than not, if somebody starts talking about justice to me, it's a combination of, you know, from Gary all the way back, right? Does it have to be just one word? Can it be a definition in that body of your process so that it's explained, right? So that you can share that and say, okay, this is what we need, right? Those are just thoughts for you to consider. I don't have the answers. Yep, sorry, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I guess part of my thoughts, and I appreciate Abra's position very much, or her thoughts very much, the openness, but sometimes people will take a word and attach that history to it and say, well, it's just because I have the rights to log this mountainside, or I have the rights to pump and sell this water from here. And people sometimes use a word like just to extend to justice to create a pretense of rights, which are not inherent rights. They are gifts of privilege. So I like the words around fairness, the gut feeling things that don't rely on the system, which was deemed to be just. The, you know, the land barons were just in their actions because they were doing what was gifted to them. They were taking away what was gifted to them. The words that pull to your heart and your stomach, as you're saying, that talk about fairness, not our justice system whatsoever. So I'd love to think the word just was an open word, but I always think about how will that trigger the other 90% of the population who aren't anywhere near this conversation, who just think they have some inherent right, some just principle on which to keep doing what they're doing. Whereas if you ask somebody, are you being fair to that person in your domination, applying your, you know, government given rights to do this or that? Are you being fair? And those are the words I would prefer to promote if you want to buy in, if you want everybody to buy in eventually.
Thanks, Gary. As I'm Abra's got a thumbs up there. I think what we've illustrated is the importance of the dialogue around the definitions, right? And then how, yes, what is the purpose of your mission? Your mission statement is how you will achieve the vision, right? So if we are being just, how are we being just? What is the action of that? Right? So it's the verbs, it's the here's how we do this. Just being a value. Just, and I think, I tend to appreciate also when you're using the word just in a question, it becomes very dismissive, right? It is an open word. And as such, it can go this way, it can go that way. Which way do you want it to go? Right? And what are the principles associated with that action? So I have no good answer for you, but I do think it's a place where you can look further. And that's tied to your vision, right? Tied to all of those other words. The next word is, what is sustainable? Yep, Nick.
So I did my degree in sustainable agriculture, and when I graduated, me and some classmates were kind of debriefing what we had just gone through these past 4 or 5 years. And the conclusion we kind of came to was we knew less about what it means to be sustainable having completed the degree than at the beginning when we entered that degree, because in spending those years dissecting what that actually means, it becomes so complicated with, like, does that mean, like, is it sustainable for farmers to actually work for 30 years, 40 years to do that work without like breaking their backs and getting stressed? Is it financial sustainability? Is it ecological? Is it social? Like, and I think the answer is yes, it's all of these. And then we have like new terms of like, well, it can't just be sustainable, it has to be regenerative. And but don't the like, is it the same word that we're putting like different meanings to? Is it like, it's so complicated, and which is like exciting that we get to like start putting words to that. I don't think we'll ever figure it out. But it's exciting. I think it like, I think, was it Alice was saying that they were interchangeable, just, and like, yeah, I think that's really plays into that. So that's my spiel that may not actually be helpful, but yeah, it's interesting.
Thanks, Nick. Here, Shauna, I see your hand up.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna put my hand down right now so it doesn't confuse anybody in the future. Just the idea of sustainability, and we talk about like words, like the word justice could be perceived as a trigger word, and I actually think of sustainability a bit like that. One of my teachings from one of my mentors is around the idea that sustainability is continuing with the status quo, like continuing on a perpetual cycle of the same. And actually what we should be striving for in all things is net positive, or the idea of regenerative, net positive. Like the natural earth cycle is not sustainable. It's regenerating new soil. It's, it's recycling nutrients in a net positive way for its own environment. So yeah, just a thought on that word sustainability as could be a trigger for some.
Anybody else? I wonder about the idea, and again, coming from a Tanakh perspective, sustainability is a foreign concept, because the world is ever changing, and we along with it. We don't domesticate, right? We go back to, we only take this much. We don't take the first piece, right? We make sure that it remains. Is that sustainability? Yeah, so sorry, Ramona, go ahead.
Sorry, I was slow with my hand there.
No worries.
I have always thought that it meant adaptability to change, as well as not taking more than you're putting back in. Because soil definitely works that way. And we all know that from the work that we do out in the field. And nature works that way. But it's not just a check and balance. You can't just take 10 trees and put 10 trees back. So there's a little nuance there. But that's kind of what I always imagined that it meant.
Thanks, Ramona. Anybody else? Do you find this helpful, this little exercise? Yeah? A few nodding heads? Okay. Because I think it's highly important when you put the vision, the mission, all of the different pieces together around then the actions, right? Then the choices, application, how you do. Yeah, go ahead, Alice.
I wasn't meaning to interrupt. I think, just full disclosure, I'm not actually certain how much energy long-term there is, time and space there is in my life over the next little while for being involved with the Food Policy Council. I really loved being, I'm hoping that I'll have some time, but I always feel really privileged to be able to put a farming piece in, we remembering that this is, we're here, we're talking about food, and much of the food that we eat right now as individuals, what are we going to do for lunch is going to be coming from somebody who is who's doing this work that I also do. And I have, especially in the last few years of really major climate disruption stuff going on. When we started out farming, it was very much a short walk. We felt like we were solving this problem of food in our community. Can we get food off of this land and feed it directly to our community? And that felt like a really to this day, it still feels like it was a really important contribution, and that we very much felt like we were solving a problem right there. And it turns out, I've been reading a lot of philosophy this past winter, hitting the books just because I'm a nerd. And it turns out that I have a problem. It is the problem of infinite regress, which is also known as turtles all the way down. And the idea is that, I have this thing in my own, in my way of thinking where I can approach something that I feel passionately about, a problem, and I'll go, okay, well, what's the solution to this problem? And no sooner do I get to that solution and I feel compelled to go, okay, is that the final solution? Is that the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the turtles, or does it rest on some other problem underneath it? Is there some other solution that we're looking for here? Because for me, sustainability means getting to the base of the base of the base of the base of the base, so that you have a self-generative solution, a solution that is like a perpetual motion machine that just is able to, it's the opposite of entropy, that's like constantly on its way to degrading. Syntropy is a word that we could use, big fancy dancy word. How that is boots on the ground as a farmer especially in these last few years. We got our start farming just from reading Elliott Coleman books. My husband actually did go to school for ecological agriculture, but me, I just read a bunch of Elliott Coleman, and his very first book, in the section on pest disease, crops, pests, disease, he doesn't have a chapter on how to manage disease. He doesn't have a chapter on how to manage pests, because in his opinion, he's like, whatever you can do to manage those things on your farm is just a palliative. It's a cloak that's covering up a deeper problem. And this is the basic idea of organic agriculture, of regenerative agriculture, of permaculture, is to actually be promoting health instead of trying to just put out the fires of disease and the fires of unhealth. And so lately on the farm, we have very much been expanding the scope of our understanding of as agriculturalists to the entire environment that we live within, the forests that surround us, the river that flows past our farm, the air that's above our farm. All of this feels urgently necessary to really communicate to people that the food that you eat does not come from a warehouse somewhere. It doesn't come from a tidy little farm that just exists in isolation from the environment that it's in. It is urgent, as so many people have already spoken to on this call, it is urgently important that we begin to see the whole system, that the entire food system needs to be addressed, and that we do need to go beyond just, well, can we support a few extra people to get on farms? That's important, yes, absolutely. And we need to be able to see the whole planet. Just the whole planet, nothing more.
It's a great segue, so thank you, Alice. As you were talking, yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you were actually referring to Yertle the turtle, but if that was part of what you were reading, but I was absolutely such important reading as a child, Dr. Seuss and his social criticisms. Sadly, we're not taught, great literature to help form our thought. So I appreciate that. And I think that this, I'm not going to put up the, well, no, I'm not going to put up the next slide, but the next question is, what is prosperous? And I think that you allude to that. And so we have about 15 minutes left, but I just want to take 10 minutes or 5 minutes to focus ourselves thinking around prosperous, that idea of prosperous. And I think you even talked about it when you were talking about the regenerative, right? The self-regenerative as being, right? The promotion of health, because that's something we haven't actually, so in another job, in my day job, I teach at the college, and I teach a course around Indigenous people's health. And we're looking at structural health, and basically having the conversations with people where our idea of health, we have become so segmented in our thinking about systems that we forget the web it is. And so I have one last slide, and I put these differently, but given one of the favorite things I have about facilitating is when people are sort of leading the way and then everybody hears them. And so I had the slides this way, but I'm going to go to this one first. Can you all see that?
Mm-hmm.
The food chain versus the food web.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is, does the food web need justice? Does it need to be sustained? Is it prosperous? Or, right, like, because this is where the mindset is, right? There are some assumptions to terminologies, there are some assumptions to the vision, to how then, right? Does this food web, this is just an example because I like it, but the food web in terms of my wild food, right, is do I take, is there a lot of human intervention in that? In the food chain, there's a lot more human intervention in a food chain than there is in a food web. It changes the definitions. And so the question, right, is going back to what does it mean to be prosperous? What is prosperous? Sorry, go ahead, Gary. I did see your hand there.
Sure, thanks. I mean, the problem with the food chain, and we see it today with a couple of bridges or border crossings being closed, when you break or interrupt the chain, many suffer, and then nobody prospers. Whereas, of course, the food web is far more resilient. And if we build the relationships and the interconnections, the food hubs, as it were, like in Creston and elsewhere, then when you see a break in one link or an issue or problem in one link, you can adapt and adjust and step in some other direction and be more prosperous and be more well off. But prosperous, do you want to be prosperous or do you want to live well or have a sense of well-being? Like prosperous seems to think you're throwing stuff in the bank. You throw money in the bank and then you die at age. I had a conversation with a colleague recently about his life expectancy is in the 60s. I'm in my 60s, and he's viewing his life in terms of not how long his pension will last. His prosperous life will be how well he enjoys the years he has, that he expects to live. So prosperity versus living well, and sharing and appreciating and drawing on that value, sharing the value. Anyway, and then the food web, absolutely, always above a food chain, create a web.
Thanks, Gary.
Mm-hmm.
Again, yeah, that idea of the definitions come from our perspectives, right? Come from our experiences. For myself, absolutely. Life lived well and long, right? What do you need for that? Right? It goes back to that vision. Ramona?
Yeah, I think prosperous, my word for it usually is abundance. That there's abundance I can share, I can receive. We're not very good at that in North American culture sometimes, smaller communities, and other cultures are better. And so I just think of prosperous as abundance.
Thanks, Ramona. Yeah, to further with that idea of the life lived well and long, understanding that accumulation, right? That valuing of accumulation isn't a universal value, right? What would be abundant for me would be very different of an abundance for Alice. And I'm not picking on you, but because I saw your child behind you, right? My children are out of the house now, right? I'm on my own. I'm at a very different place in my life. So abundance for me is a good cup of coffee and a good muffin that I didn't have to cook, right? But I don't have all of the rest to have to look after. And we have that principle, again, a Tanakha principle is you take what you need, but what you need might be more than what I need. Right? So it's not actually an equal amount. There's not an equity in it, or an equality, I should say, in it. But it's also in purpose and role and responsibility. So as the oldest sister is 7 sisters and a brother, right? In a lot of ways, I'm supposed to be making sure that everybody has what they need if we follow that way. And then you look at someone like Sophie Pierre, given gifts to be able to give back out, right? So it's that reciprocity, right? But it's also that system, right? Political system in terms of giving of resources, distribution of resources, and the definition of what those resources are. Go ahead, Alice. You're on
Alice,
mute,
you're
by
not
the way.
unmuted.
I was holding my space bar down. Didn't work. I'm not sure when I wrote this down, but at some point as I've been listening here, this came to me. The fallacy of the modern industrialized food system is this idea, this impossible idea that human health can exist in isolation from ecosystem health.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. We see that definitely when we look at the relationship between Indigenous peoples' languages and biodiversity. In places where biodiversity has been impacted, forested, deforested, reforested, is predominantly areas where Indigenous languages are either non-existent, dying, sleeping, but devastated. Mm-hmm. And the language speaks to the ecosystem, right? Speaks to the health of the ecosystem, how to take care of that ecosystem, definitely. Thank you for that. Anybody else? We have about 5 minutes before I'm going to call it to a close. And anybody else want to comment on the definition of prosperous or? Yeah, Abra?
I just have to say that I hope through this process we actually remove it from our statements, because to me it's so closely linked to the notion of what's it called? Capitalism and accumulation. And I don't want that in our food systems. I don't want that as part of what we do. I think the original process to come up with that language didn't necessarily embrace that notion, but I think it's too readily sucked into that worldview, and I find it problematic.
Thanks, Abra. So, sorry, Elizabeth, did you want to go ahead? No? Okay, sorry. So on my screen, when you're I get that little yellow frame that goes on when somebody's making noise, and so I immediately get called to it. The 2 years of COVID has made me very, very sensitive to facilitating Zoom meetings. So it's like out of the peripheral vision of me going, oh. So thank you. I wanted to, we're at the end of our time. I wanted to go around very quickly and just one thing that you know, either an aha moment or something that you're going to take further that you're like, I need to think about this more. And just to close off. Anybody want to start? Oh, Daniel's going to start.
Thank you for everyone for sharing, and it was a really important for me to sit back and listen to everyone's sharings. One thing that sort of stuck out was when Abra was talking about sort of the current state of our glaciers and all that's wrapped up in that. And I found myself thinking about that type of thing a lot, and how do we not get paralyzed by the current state of affairs? And then Michele, you responded with something and said a bit, I think you quoted something, but said, we're still here. And that really resonated with me. Then we still have to take actionable steps in whatever small ways we can. And I think that's a really empowering idea and way forward. Thank you.
Alice?
I just, going way back to the very beginning, Michele, when you were welcoming us in and talking about the importance of speaking from your experience, from your center, and speaking for you as a Ktunaxa woman, and not speaking to any other particular traditions, but from that centering place. And that I actually took with me from the last time that we were together in this meeting. I was like, oh, you know, yeah, I'm also working with that a lot right now, in terms of, I feel like there's so many things. That's my daughter. There's so much to do right now, and I have been really kind of feeling my way into where it feels like, Gary, thank you so much, the river is carrying me. Like, where is it just that the river is carrying me effortlessly so that I can have the maximum effect right now? There's so many options, so much to do. And I'm one person with limited time. And so thank you for those beautiful gems. I love it. And definitely I'll be taking that with me forward.
Thank you. Anybody want to go next? Who wants to go next? Oh, Chelsea?
I do. I had the same impact Daniel did with your comment of we're still here and moving past the grief. Like, man, that's taken me my whole adult life to get past that, of feeling, you know, as a child, really scared about climate change and you know, pretty much just turtling to the point where I'm, you know, a homestead hermit in Argenta, and now starting to kind of, you know, get involved and get activated and feeling like not too cynical, like it's worth it. It's so important. And then going outside in that meeting, like, wow, that was a good suggestion. Since I've gotten this job with Lynx, I've been on the computer an incredible amount of time, and yeah, just to take like a minute made a big difference. So thank you for that tool. And lastly, my curiosity is really raised. You made a comment, English isn't a real language. I have a lot of curiosity about English, and you know, that exercise of definitions. I love that. I'm really curious what you meant by that. I know we don't have time probably to get into that, but yeah, I'm really curious about that, and the Indigenous languages and how they relate to sustainability. I don't understand that. Like in my frontal cortex, I don't know what you mean by that, but I'm curious.
Thank you. Who's next? Gary.
I guess an overriding thought of mine when people are choosing words to define a vision, a mission, you need to find a balance between being bold and being triggering. Even a word like sustainable is used so much now that somebody may say, oh, you use sustainable, and then all of a sudden they attribute to you a set of values or actions or something that somebody else did when they were using that word sustainable. Whereas there's so many other great words that we've heard today that are not overused and are much more pointed or more direct and maybe in their own way more bold. But being balanced between bold and triggering, you don't want arguments. We want a large portion of the population to say, this makes sense. Why? Because it does. We need to learn to feed ourselves again. And we want them to adapt it, adopt it, flow with it without a struggle and argument. That they just see the common sense of being more resilient, being more generous, being more nutritious, whatever those words are, that people can't say no to and can't push away as easily as some of the other words that are way overused.
Thank you, Gary. Ramona?
Sorry, any chance I could just clarify something?
Yeah.
Do we have a moment?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, based off what Gary just said, like, isn't this some of the language we use? Wouldn't we want it to open up a conversation?
If sometimes bold is good, and I believe Abra has spoken to that as us when she spoke to her board and some of the bit of side emails we've had. Sometimes you need to be bold and stimulate dialogue, but use a little bit of caution in whether you're going to trigger arguments or whether you're going to trigger constructive thought and participation. And sometimes words and how you string the words together can lead people to preconceptions and they don't even try to understand you. This is the opportunity to be very careful about the choice of words.
So I think what I'm going to suggest you do as well is look at it's not in isolation, right? It's a key piece to consider. Your words are not in isolation. Your vision statement is not in isolation. Your mission statement is not in isolation. It's part of a big picture, right? That's why I use that graphic to show these things are all connected, right? So that's, I think, in a nutshell, I think what Gary, what you're trying to communicate. And so, but this is just the visioning session. Go ahead, Ramona. Thank you for that, both of you.
So I guess the saying might be, you don't want to shut the door to people by the choice of your language. And so they might not even come in to have the argument, but that's not what I wanted to say. So I was really stricken by two things at the very beginning. And that was, Michele, your expression of how the body moves forward and how different parts of the body create the whole. And it reminded me of the yoga that I've done that's probably saved my life since I was in my 20s. And then after that, you said old wisdom. And what that made me think is that all of our ancient practices have some common. And so why wouldn't our new ones? So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Nick.
I guess what comes away the most is the idea of visioning. And I think it's very easy to a vision statement is very institutional thing, but to be reminded of personal vision. And I found, especially during the pandemic, it's been very easy to kind of be in limbo and just going with what life is happening and trying to keep your head above water and being reminded that no, we can vision for ourselves and we can be the author of our story. And I think that's a nice reminder for me to take some time in thinking through that, both for this process for the policy committee and for myself personally. So yeah.
Thank you. Let's see, I think we need to hear still from Shauna and Elizabeth and Haley and Amy.
I don't mind speaking quickly. I think so much of what has already been said that it really hit home, I resonate with. When we went outside for a moment, I had a moment, at the river and was reminded really sharply with the eagle cry that I have this new relation on this land with these two eagles that share this view with me. And it just reminded me of the idea of eagle vision and how important it is that we're doing this, that we're looking ahead, that we're planning for the future. And one of my shortcomings is having mouse vision too, and being able to do the micro tasks. So I've been taking notes and really trying to embrace. I'm really good at eagle, but mouse vision is a working point for me. So as a reminder to continue down that path.
Thanks, Shauna. I was sorry for you about mouse. Haley, Elizabeth.
Well, I mean, I'm touched by the conversation about climate change for sure. And I'm on the Creston Climate Action Society, and we're all volunteers, and key to what we do is work with other people. So what we'll do is present an idea, and then if one other person joins us, then we move forward and we don't have to consult with anybody. So it's all about action. And we had this book club, and it was reading The Future We Choose and Surviving the Climate Crisis. And it's written by a woman called Christina Figueira, and she led the Paris Accord in 2015. Anyway, her whole thing is to challenge, and we did this through the book club and also in our minds, anytime we have any doubts, to challenge our doubts about the future and to be, she doesn't say use the word warrior, but there's a lot, action is so important, and it's very liberating. She was talking about taking action, and so there's so much we can do. And this other woman and I, we met with Brittany Anderson and about preserving nature and how important that is. I mean, there's so many things we can do, even with, so I found that the book inspiring, and not that I don't get down too, but I know that the taking action is fantastic. And that's what we do with the Food Policy Council, and just the whole, I don't know where I'm going with this, but just the whole visioning. I was thinking about it this morning. I reflect in the morning, and I was thinking about Fields Forward and our vision for Fields Forward, and applying to CIP for a grant to do strategic planning. So this is so perfect, but having a vision is so important. Just that big picture just really, really helps. So thank you. I just found the whole session just really deeply interesting and inspiring.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Haley, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Can you hear us? Because we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yes, you froze there for a second.
Oh, you're going in and out. So can you go ahead?
I just wanted to say I'm very grateful for this space and everyone's engagement. 10 years ago, I finished my master's in policy and spoke in my thesis about Indigenous worldviews and paradigms, and on this discussion with sustainable development. And in my thesis defense, the panel asked me if I believed in reality. And I thought in that moment, wow. And I said no, because there are, different realities and understandings and paradigms. And, I passed, but it was in that moment realizing there's just, that's this kind of conversation for many people is not even in their mind space. It's so far out there that they ask if you believe in reality as soon as you start talking about Indigenous worldview or other paradigms and cosmovisions. So I am incredibly grateful that 10 years later that I am in this space and container with this kind of discussion happening, and this these decolonizing activities and discussions. So I'm just incredibly grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Haley. Amy or Abra?
Yeah, thanks everybody. I've just really appreciated sort of listening and taking notes and hearing what everybody has to say. And yeah, I really enjoyed these conversations of looking at terms and language and what it means and how it can lead to action. So thank you for that.
Abra?
I wouldn't have thought this, but I feel very light and almost giggly at the end of this session. And I still don't have a very clear idea of where the Food Policy Council needs to go and what my role can and should be with it. It really feels like we're at a liminal space where so much needs to be done and can be done, and there's an opening. And I'm really hopeful and very excited about the possibility of some grants coming through that will allow us to continue to really advance our commitment to addressing systemic racism as it manifests in the food system. And for me, going back to the language of justice, which may or may not be problematic, like if we aren't seriously as a Food Policy Council thinking about the homelands that we all have the incredible privilege of being on and understanding all of the harms we in our worldview and our food systems and our assumptions perpetuate, I think we'll miss something really foundational in what we can be doing here. And so I'd like to disclose to you all in the budget for this grant that we are hoping one will hear at the end of this week and one will hear at the end of the month. We put in a budget line to be able to secure Michelle's ongoing advice and guidance for the Food Policy Council. So every finger and toe is crossed that we could continue this relationship and be able to pay her for her time, because her time is incredibly valuable. And I'm just so grateful for these two sessions where I basically just, Amy and I had a very vague idea of, we need to come together and do this rethink. Here, Michele, what are you going to do with us? And our faith in her wisdom and in this process and in who's going to show up in these conversations, I think has been well placed. And I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to do with what we've been learning together. So thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Amy, for taking notes. I know that's a hard role and it limits your participation. And thank you very much, Michele, for spending the time with us again today.
Of course. And I forgot all about that. That was like just before Christmas, I think. It was like, whoa, yes, do it, go for it. But that doesn't mean that I'm not interested, of course. So I wanted to take just a few last seconds. One is appreciating again that you're in a process, right? That big picture and all of the pieces that go along with it. Often people think of visioning as, the luxury of time to think and feel, when in fact it is actually, thinking is actually part of an action. Critical thinking, critical feeling, critical perspectives, critical consciousness, and critical doing, right, is part of that decolonizing. Because you need to know where you are, how you got there, where you want to go to keep going. The vision allows us to deal with all the things that are coming at us and decide what we're going to pick up and what we're not going to pick up. We don't have to pick it up at all, right? It's not everything is for everybody. Not everything is, and I really appreciated, Shauna, your comment about eagle vision and mouse. And, I don't know if I shared that story about mouse with you before, but Insuk mouse is an incredibly powerful character in Tanakh knowledge that I am familiar with, right? Does the right of the paper, the details, gets it right down, right? You want to unpack something, it'll rip it up to shreds. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's incredible power. But everything has that role and responsibility. If you have your vision, you know where you're going, you know what you need, you'll get there. The work of it is deciding, is this my vision? Are we going here? What do we need? What do you need? What do I need? Right? And looking out for each other in the long run, knowing what each other's gifts are, embracing them, and working together. So my last slide just says, "Husukas Kootenay na kut hasit sakti manafla kutka kapsin." So I just learned that I was supposed to put my tongue on the bottom, behind my bottom teeth, not the front teeth. And so now I'm very aware when I'm saying to try to go down when I've been trained for 20 years to put it up. So I found in the last few days I've been losing that sound. So thank you all very much for your time and your efforts and your words, especially your words. I'm not 100% sure what the next step is, but be sure to know there are next steps coming. The slide deck, I believe, is going to be available to you to take a review of, as well as the video if you want to rethink these things. I just think you're all fabulous. I love your energy, and I'm really grateful to have been asked to come in and spend a few hours getting to know you all and to understand and learn as well. I'm not part of your purview, and yet I see so many really amazing opportunities. And I hope good health, good food, good company, and well-being for you and all yours. So, tachta an Winnicott.